Okay, afternoon, Commissioners. I'd like to call the Finance, Audit, and Budget Committee to order for Thursday, November 14th, 2024. First item is Pledge of Allegiance.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next item is adoption agenda. I need a motion to adopt.
Romano adopts the agenda.
Support Van Sickle.
Moved by Romano, supported by Van Sickle. Any additions, subtractions from the agenda? Seeing none, please vote.
Motion passes 10-0.
Next is approval of minutes dated November 12th, 2024. Need a motion to approve.
Support Center.
Moved by Lucido, supported by Zinner. Any changes or updates to the minutes? Seeing none, please vote.
Motion passes 10-0.
Okay, next is public participation. This is the first opportunity for public participation for those who would like to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes on an item which is on today's agenda. There'll also be a second opportunity for public participation for those who would like to speak on any issue. Anyone from the public like to speak? Agenda items only. Come to the mic, just state your name.
My name is Jason Berger. I'd like to speak to you about the budget. I'm a farmer in northern Macomb County. I'm active in our community. I have a nonprofit where I help people get started farming. I'm very active with Farm Bureau, holding positions on multiple committees, including the Policy Development Committee. As a grassroots organization, this process allows us as farmers to compile our unified position into a publication updated annually so our elected officials can easily reference our position on any given subject. Recently, Jeff Randazzo from Animal Control of Macomb County requested funding for a large animal veterinarian. This is problematic for multiple reasons. First, I've included a couple notes. I just found out about the meeting and that we were so close to getting this budget approved, so I didn't have much time, but I put together a sheet that has our Farm Bureau's policy. It's the first page. I think that's pretty self-explanatory, where we stand cumulatively as farmers in Michigan, not even just Macomb County, but in Macomb County and Michigan. So the second, I know Don is, his throat is sore today, so I can't talk or whatever, so I wanted to include that letter from him kind of highlighting some of the conflict, so it saves me a little bit of time. Third, and most importantly, is the jurisdiction issue outlined in the Right to Farm Act. So I've included the Right to Farm Act. A lot of us have heard about the Right to Farm Act, and it seems kind of daunting. It's really only the 4 pages, so I included it so you could actually read it, see it for yourself. It's the express legislative intent that the Right to Farm Act would supersede other local laws and ordinances. In the Right to Farm Act, there is a process for enforcing it, and that enforcement is that the complainant, whether it be the municipality or the dog catcher, animal control, they would contact MDARD, and MDARD would investigate the situation, and MDARD would determine whether or not help from animal control was needed. Jeffrey Randazzo, at the risk of being too confrontational, is an activist, and it's causing some conflicts with farms in your county, and it's causing harm to some farms
You have 30
and
seconds.
families. So I just wanted to make you aware of it so that you guys don't give him the funding and create more legal conflicts and potential lawsuits in the within the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public like to speak? Going once, twice. We'll close public participation. Next is a public hearing. This is a public hearing relative to the proposed budgets for the general fund, certain special revenue and enterprise funds, and the debt service fund for the fiscal years ending September 30th, 2025 and December 31st, 2025. I'll So the next item on the agenda is actually to open up the hearing. I'll open up the hearing at 3:05 p.m. Is there anyone here from the public that would like to continue speaking about the budget or has concerns about the budget? Going once? Oh.
Jason Berger, I just wanted to make myself available for discussion if anybody had any questions. And I'm unfamiliar with the process, but it sounded like that was an opportunity, if anyone has any questions. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Anyone else from the public like to speak in regards to the proposed budget? Once, twice? We will close the public hearing at 3:06 p.m. Next is presentations. This is the fiscal year 2023 annual comprehensive financial report. Our auditors from UHY, we have Marlene and John here. We also have our Chief Deputy County Executive Delden here as well. So Marlene, I guess we'll let you and John kick it off. Before we start, I'll take a motion to receive and file the audit.
So move. Support.
Moved by Haas, supported by Van Sickle. Good afternoon. You guys have a presentation for us, so we have it on our screen.
Have it up on the
so
screens?
We are good to go.
All right, good afternoon. My name is Marlene Beach. I was the principal on it. And, John,
And
go ahead.
I'm the manager, John Schnurr, on the engagement.
As opposed to going through the financial statements in detail, because they are very long, we have a presentation like we did last year to hit some of the highlights.
Could you pull that microphone a little closer to you, please? Thank you.
How's that? Better? There we go. Okay, we audited the financial statements of the government activities, the business type activities, the aggregate presented to component units, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information for the county as of the year of December 31st, 2023, which also included the notes to the financial statements. As detailed in our report, we did issue an unmodified report on the financial statements. Unmodified is the highest opinion that we can give. Auditing standards required, we communicate some certain administration matters. The following slides kind of detail some of these. We did have an engagement letter that did give out the scope of the audit, and we described that in the previous slide with what we did audit. The financial statements are the county's. The only part that is ours is the auditor's report, and as I said, that did have an unmodified opinion. Management's responsible for the selection and use of the accounting policies. The significant accounting policies used by the county were described in Note 1 to the financial statements. Certain amounts in the financial statements require management to make estimates. As part of the audit, we look at the reasonableness of such assumptions and estimates. We did note that we did not find any irregularities in assumptions and/or estimates. Guess I'm not hitting my, We are here late this year, and next slide does detail the difficulties that we had with the audit this year. Audit is normally completed in June. We just completed the audit last month. The county was due in part to the conversion to the new system. The audit was not ready to be started. We came in, started doing some work in July, and said normally we're done at the end of, the audit's due at the end of June. Throughout the audit process, there was about 125 entries that were provided to UHY by the county. This continued through the audit. In addition to those entries that were supplied, the 125 were supplied by the county, we did have 9 auditor adjusting entries. Some of the entries we had were for claims on cash and the related due tos and due froms. We did have an instance of the Emergency Management's Grant Fund, oh, sorry, where the revenue was overstated. In the Delinquent Tax Revolving Fund, we did have some adjustments to interest revenue. Interest and administrative fee accruals were also adjusted in the Delinquent Tax Revolving Fund. We had an adjustment to accrued wages in the Community Action Fund, and also an adjustment to donated food in the Community Action Fund. In the Community Mental Health, we also had some additional claims on cash and related due to and due from accounts. And there was an adjustment to the market value of investments for the drainage district. So those were entries that were made by management, and they are included in the numbers you do see in the financial statements. There were 4 past journal entries. What that means is these are entries that were below materiality that didn't need to be made, but we just wanted everybody to be aware of them. Some of them included investment income and prepaid and payables and right-of-use assets and receivables, which deals with the lease standard that the county adopted last year. We're not aware of any information included with our financial statements other than when single audit is completed, it will be sent as part of the single audit package. We didn't have any disagreements with the county's management over the course of the audit. To our knowledge, there were no consultants with other independent auditors during the audit. And there were no issues discussed with management prior to our appointment. One of the things we do is, as part of the audit, is we do test certain internal controls. One of the controls we were looking at is the county's internal control over financial reporting. These were done for a basis for designing our audit procedures and for the purpose of expressing our opinion on the financial statements, but not for the purpose of expressing an opinion on the effectiveness of the organization's internal control over financial reporting. We are required by audit standards to communicate to those charged with governance all material weaknesses and significant deficiencies that have been that we identified during their audit. We do have these detailed. The next slide does detail the definition of a material weakness and a significant deficiency. Our consideration of the internal control was for the limited purpose I just noted and was not designed to identify all deficiencies in internal control. There might be material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. Therefore, material weaknesses or significant deficiencies may exist that were not identified. The following slides detail what we reported as material weaknesses for this year. The first finding, 2023-001, bank reconciliations were not completed in a timely manner. State of Michigan defines 6 weeks as subsequent to the month end as timely for completing bank recs. Bank recs were actually completed while we were completing our audit field work. Finding 2023-002. As I mentioned before, the county's was not ready for the audit to start early. It took considerable time for the county to close the books. And as I mentioned earlier, there were numerous adjustment entries made by the county after the start of the audit. And as I mentioned, we did have 9 adjusting entries. Finding 2023-003. When we got a number of the supporting schedules, they didn't tie to the general ledger detail. So the schedules were not reconciled to the general ledger balances before they were given to the auditors. Finding 004. As I mentioned earlier, the county did convert to new accounting software this year. Reconciliations to ensure the proper conversion and that no data, was lost or in wrong buckets or anything was not completed until months after the conversion took place. We would have expected the reconciliations to be completed at the time of the conversion. We did not note any irregularities in the conversions when we reviewed them. It's just that they were done much later than we would have anticipated. As I mentioned earlier, the Emergency Management Grants Department had revenue that was recorded in the wrong year, so there was an adjusting entry to take care of that. The last two are significant deficiencies. A significant deficiency, I always have problems with that word, is not as severe as a material weakness, but something we thought should be brought to your attention. A number of the county's departments have their own standalone accounting software. The county did not reconcile the balances between some of the specific departments and the general ledger system until the audit process. The biggest one we did notice was the pooled cash between the general fund and the community health, which led to an adjustment. This does not say, we did not find there, it was a cash issue. It was just the cash and the related due to or due from. We also noted when we asked the finance department to pull some reports from the new Workday system, specifically a budget to actual, that part of the software was not set up yet to be able to pull reports. So the report that we got for budget to actual was actually an Excel spreadsheet. We would, with the system, you should be able to pull a report, directly from the system that doesn't require any manipulation. Those were the material weaknesses and the significant deficiencies. The other one, the next slide, is just a couple recommendations. I think we made the same comment last year as part of the annual, to validate the status of the retirees. The county sends out a letter. Issue is that the signatures are not validated besides a witness. We recommend the county, consider the use of a third-party provider, death records to use to validate retiree status. We also noted the Emergency Management Department expended funds for certain grant expenditures, but didn't apply for reimbursement in a timely manner. It was inside the grant period. It was a 3-year grant, so it was not outside of that. It was just, they were getting a substantial amount of expenditures before they applied for reimbursement on those grants. And we recommend that they just do that on a more regular basis to keep the cash flow coming in, because the cash flow is going out for expenditures. You want to see that same cash flow coming in for your revenues. Next slide, this is, I said, as opposed to going through the final statements, we just put the statement of net position. This is the county as a whole, so this encompasses everything of the county. This is a full accrual basis, which means it includes things like your long-term debt, long-term receivable, pension, and OPEB. As cash and pooled investments in 2022 were about $871 million, up to about $895. Deferred outflows varies from year to year, and a lot of that is based on the actuarial report for your pension and for your OPEB. Net capital assets was $1.2 billion last year, and it went up to 1.3 this year. So the investments in your net capital assets went up. Investments last year were about $249 million, up to about $263 million. Last year, when we did the presentation, the market was down considerably. There was unrealized losses, not realized, but unrealized, which has to do with the fair market value. When we did the audit this year, the market was up, therefore the values of the investments went up. Okay, so the first slide was assets. The next one is liabilities and net position. I think the key one you want to look at there is your unrestricted net position. That's funds that are available for use of the county that are not restricted by any enabling legislation. Last year, they were $348 million. This year, they're about $473 million. So we had a substantial increase in the unrestricted net position of the county. And once again, that includes all the funds of the county. We also wanted to present the percent of debt, as a percent of total net position. Last year it was 12.074. This year it's down to 9.5. Debt was down, but also your net assets were down. Those are phenomenal rates. Very low debt to total net position ratio. So we wanted to make sure that you were aware of that. The business type bonded debt was about 14% last year, and it's down to 11% this year. Next couple slides are your general fund. If you look at cash and pooled investments last year, about 117 million. This year they're 64. But if you look at the due to and due from, so that's money that's due from other funds to the general fund. If you add that 56 to the 64, your cash is fairly consistent from year to year. It's just there hadn't been transfers from one fund to the other. Next slide is liabilities and net assets. Once again, you want to look at your fund balance unassigned. 108 million in 2022, 116 in 2023. That's direct relation of revenues exceeding expenses in the general fund. The non-spendable fund balance represents things like your inventory, prepaid items. It's things that aren't available to turn into cash. That's why they're considered non-spendable. Revenues, when you compare 2022 to 2023. Federal and state grants were about 43 million last year. They were just a little over 49 million this year. Property taxes went from approximately 141 million to almost $149 million. Other revenues went from 10 million to 18. That also includes the interest and the unrealized gains on your investments. That was a big part of that $8 million amount. Expenses year over year are fairly consistent. Public safety did go up. That was the one area where there was a major increase. General government went from 48 to about 53. But if you look at percentage of spending on that, the general government last year in 2022 was about 25%. This year it's about 24%. So it's staying consistent as a part of the general fund as a whole. And that is it for our formal presentation. We are open to any questions anyone may have.
Thank you, Marlene. Thank you, John, for the presentation. We do have questions, so we'll start with Commissioner Perna.
Yes, thank you for being here. A couple of questions. I noticed in your cover letter here that regarding Martha T. Berry, you did not audit Martha T. Berry. You used their auditors for your report.
Correct.
Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you look at Martha T. Berry?
Martha T. Berry is a separate entity, and then they have had their own auditor for many years. So we were not contracted to look at Martha T. Berry.
What if your standards are higher than their auditors? Would you have, you don't know what their standard is.
No, but we do get their peer review report. We do review of the other audit firm. We do get the copy of their peer review report. And what that is as public accounting firms, we have, every 3 years, we have to have our records, our audits, basically audited by another independent firm that comes in and looks at it. If there were any discrepancies on that, you do not, it's notified in the report you get from your peer review company or your peer review firm. And there were no deviations or anything like that noted in their report. That is all, but we do, and the report does say that we did not audit it and we don't, we're depending
You
on
don't
their
feel
work.
it's necessary.
No, we did look at their report. They did submit their report to us prior to the audit being finalized. So we do review it, but we do not do an audit of their audit per se.
The revenue that you look at that comes from other departments, do you review the revenue that they say has come in, let's say from the treasurer's office, let's say it's from Rose? Do you review any of their revenue to make sure that all the revenue that's coming from those departments are sent correctly?
We do revenue testing on a number of funds. And we do, for some types of the revenue, we send confirmations out. For other ones, we do analytics. We also look at receipts to verify revenues.
Do you see any potential loss that we could be exposed to in your review of our entire county records?
No, the instances we did see were the internal controls over financial reporting. It was the delayed time. Nothing came to our attention that signified any type of loss. But it was just the fact that everything was so delayed, and because there were numerous adjusting entries, that the records that you were receiving for the year would not have been accurate. And when we started the audit, the trial balance, if we'd have been given one at that time, would have not been accurate.
So the delay on this report is because the finance department didn't give you the information ahead of time, or?
Correct, right. Where the audit actually we did not really start heavy audit work until the latter part of August and September. September, we got a final trial balance from the finance department. And we need the final trial balance because that's when we could start really comparing the numbers to numbers, because otherwise you're going at a moving target. So we want to make sure that we've got the final numbers.
I noticed in your cover letter, you didn't come up with any conclusions or recommendations.
In the auditor's report, we do not. The auditor's report is it's standard wording for the most part. We do have, in the back, we do have our schedule of findings and question costs. That's where we that's where we reported the findings, and then the recommendations, we had a few recommendations, so.
So no conclusions of you're doing a good job, you're rating you from 1 to 10, you don't do any of that, or strong recommendation?
No, we do give, the recommendations are, the findings kind of represent, if it's a finding, there has to be some type of improvement. But as for a rating of 1 to 10, no, that is not something that accountants are actually even allowed to do. So,
And what do you mean by materially misstated?
that each fund has a materiality level based on the revenues of those certain funds. And when we got the trial balance for the funds, adjustments were made that moved things greater than that materiality level. So let's say if materiality was $1 million for a fund, we may have received a adjusting entry for $2 million. So it's anything above the level that's determined to be material to the
Is
financial
that
statements.
something the finance department is overstating?
We had did have the instance of revenue being overstated in the emergency management grant fund. We received adjustments on a number of things. John, you want to go into maybe a little detail?
So there were quite a few adjustments. Honestly, not many of them hit revenues. It was more of the expenditures that it was hitting. So your expenses were getting hit, or like it's a related accrual that was getting posted, But all these adjustments we were getting were over our materiality threshold, which, to go back on Marlene, is essentially, you would look at the financial statement. If that number wasn't there, it would look weird, right? So that's what our materiality thresholds are. It's just identify like, okay, if it's off by this amount, then, okay, that looks weird, that's not right. So that's what those materiality thresholds are. But to go back on revenues, they were, other than the one that Marlene mentioned, there wasn't a ton relating to revenue. As I said, it was more relating to the expenditures. So your bottom line would have been the one that would have been overstated at that point. So you're changing net position.
Okay, the revenue from all the departments that come in, do you examine any of that revenue in a timely manner when they get it and when we get it?
Oh, you mean from, maybe like from CMH or the money coming, how, if it's,
CMH, road department, public works, how do you monitor that revenue that comes in, that we get it in a timely manner?
we didn't test the timeliness of the revenues coming from one department to the other. We did look at the due tos and due froms, which is a direct relation of either revenues or expenses. And as I mentioned, they were high in some of the departments, so there was money that was due from one department or the other, back and forth.
And finally, do you recommend that we audit Martha T-Berry next year?
Martha T. Berry, it is audited every year. It has had a
No,
clean
I'm talking
opinion, but
encompassing in your responsibility.
we don't, we disclaim the opinion on it, so therefore, it's not, it's not covered under our scope. It is, you said you can get just like we did, we get copies of the audit report. You can examine that audit report.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Van Sickle.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thanks for being here.
you.
You mentioned that some of our departments have their own accounting system. Do you recall, is this the first year you've seen that?
No, that was there last year
That's-
too.
It-
So the roads department typically has their own system because they use one that's more modified to what they need.
Okay,
So I do see that typically, that's not uncommon. CMH does have a different one, which is a little bit it's not much different. They report everything, or are supposed to be reporting everything to the general county. So it should be, everything's gonna be in your main system because they all report up to it. It's
Okay.
just they're all gonna have their different ERP systems.
when they report up to it, they're just roll-up numbers.
Exactly,
They're
yeah,
not individual line items.
yeah.
Who audits the individual accounting system like roads and CMH and whatnot?
We do, UHY does,
Okay, so
yes,
you go in and audit all those separate ones.
correct, yes.
And then I guess you call it testing whether all the numbers in their system come over to our system.
Correct, yeah, one of the things we do is compare, we'll get the ending balances from, let's just say, roads, and we'll make sure that the county's workday system, those tie out. It's one of the
Okay.
things we do look at, to make sure that they are compatible. We did find some instances between the claims on cash account, that's where our recommendation came from.
Is that tie-up, as you say, is that electronic or is that a manual process?
Oh, it would be an electronic process.
So their system automatically reports into our system?
Not automatically, it would be they would give you give in summary to whoever in the finance department that they would be giving it to at that point, and then
So
they
would
would,
like export a electronic summary?
Exactly.
And then it would go over to finance and they'd import that electronic summary?
yeah, they can either import it or sometimes they post it as a journal entry, which that part would be manual.
Okay.
But it would just be summarized line items that they're just posting to their GL.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Zinner.
Thank you, Chair. Can you tell me who literally hired you for Macomb County?
We are hired by the board.
Thank you. And did you say, I believe you said, not contracted to audit Martha T. Berry? Is that true? I mean, isn't that what you said?
Yes, yeah, it is not included in our engagement letter, that is correct.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Haw.
Thank you, Chair. If I can clarify the Martha Teeberry issue, they are a separate government entity from Macomb County. So they pick their own auditor and control their own revenue streams, expenditures. All they do is report it to UHY, who includes it into the book. We hire them. We would need the concurrence of because we talked about this 2 years ago.
Yes, I
The
understand.
concurrence of the Martha Teeberry Board to include them in with the county audit. And I don't think we're gonna get that, just frankly speaking. With the deficiencies that you have reported, you've concluded the 2023 audit. Are you of the opinion the numbers that we ended with in 2023 are accurate moving into 2024?
We found no material misstatements. We have to use that word materiality, but the numbers, we are opining and saying that your financial statements are materially stated.
That sounded like a lawyer's. So you're confident beginning 2024 with year ending 2023 that those are the numbers we can use to proceed into this year's budgetary
Correct,
process?
based on our audit procedures, yes.
Thank you. That's all I have, Chair.
Commissioner Romano.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
I'm going back to that significant deficiencies and material weaknesses. Have all of those been corrected at the time that you completed your audit? You found some weaknesses, you found something that was significant that you thought was enough to call it out. Has all of that been corrected by the time you completed your audit that you're aware of or that you know of, or you stated it? Go ahead.
Yeah, the bank recs were completed. By the time our audit was completed, they are still late, for the year to, that long, 6 weeks behind. I don't know where they are in that status right now. I know they did have some help and they were getting them caught up. Whether they're current right now, we don't know. The one thing I know that because of, this was just a few, October, we wanted the reports, like a budget to actual pulled, if they've got that set up in Workday yet. I think that's gonna require some assistance from consultants or Workday to get that into the system. I don't know if that capability is there yet. I know they were working on it, but I don't know if that is there yet.
Okay. The other question, actually a couple. Those understated expenditures. Can you were there that many or is there something that you can pinpoint that you're seeing, or do you know off the top of your head which ones we're talking about, the understated expenditures? And actually what I'm looking for is not only which ones they were, but how much we're talking about. I mean, if it's just a few dollars, I don't have a problem with that, but we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, I'm interested.
I don't have the adjustments with me right now. I can get that information for you to verify, to be in the letter we have sent. It does include every adjustment that was made. It does not include all the ones that the county made because it said there was 125 of those. But we can do an analysis of that and let you know if there was something that was repeated. Off the top of my head, I don't remember seeing anything, that was the same error over and over again.
I'm looking for dollar amounts, and like I said, I'm not concerned with dollars instead. I'm concerned with lots of money being understated as far as expenditures were concerned. Yeah, if you could get that to us, we'd certainly appreciate it.
Yep.
Last thing I have is the emergency management grants that you said they did not apply for the grant or for the reimbursement. Was that corrected, or is that something that was lost?
No, it was not. It is not lost because it was a 3-year grant. They have that much time to get that money. It's just they were waiting until closer to the end to get the money. But it was not lost because they were still within the period of performance of the grant, which means that's the time that you've got from this point to this point to apply for your reimbursement to get your expenditures.
So at the same time you're getting that other part to us, would you also find out which grants were not, which grants were not reimbursed from the grantor?
Yes, sir.
Also?
Yep.
That's all I have. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Marlene, I got a few questions. So
Your second round.
You said no.
I'm on here first.
Well, your second round, you already went through the first round. You got it right now, Jim. So, a couple things. First of all, I really like the charts that you put in the presentation.
Thank you.
My synopsis of that is Macomb County is in excellent financial condition.
Yes,
Would you agree?
yes, I would agree.
One of the areas that I look at in the audit primarily, and I look at this in budget, and everyone knows this because I've told everybody 100 times, but really what we've budgeted in this calendar year and what we've actually spent in this calendar year. And based on the final numbers, it looks like we had almost like an $11 million surplus based on the numbers from budget to actual. Is that correct? It's on page C4.
That page was that, Joe?
C4.
Excuse me, Chair, you saying underspent or overspent?
Surplus.
Surplus.
It's the general fund, right? Yeah, okay.
So we increased that fund balance.
The fund balance was increased about $9.9 million, correct?
Okay.
Which was $10 million more than what you had budgeted. You actually had budgeted a net loss of approximately $1 million, and the net revenues over expenditures were almost $11 million.
On that same page, can you tell me, because I don't know if this is new, but the subscription-based IT arrangements, we don't have that in the budget,
Yeah, so that
but
was
it's
in the-
noted here. Can you
That
just
was in the
explain that?
NASB that came out this year. So essentially, we have to book an asset and the related subscriptions. So we go through all your subscriptions, and if they meet a certain criteria, which is usually length, or typically it's length, like how long the agreement is. So like your ERP systems and stuff like that typically would meet that criteria, would result in that additional expense and the related asset and liability. So that's why that's getting booked this year.
It's similar to leases that went into effect last year where you have to book the asset and the liability. Any new subscriptions that are purchased in that year will show up in the fund as an expenditure, and that's what you're looking at, Commissioner Sabatini. So
So moving forward, it would be ideal for us to budget that separately so that we can actually see what we're spending on an annual basis.
yeah, and actually, the part that gets budgeted is the net, without getting into too much detail, is the net present value of it, so it's actually over the long term of it. But that's one of the things you don't want to look at. I mean, this past year, you had the workday, a very large one, and that hit this year. So it's any time you're going to have a major subscription purchased, you would want to think about budgeting that, so.
Okay, so when I look at like each department as an example, like IT, I'm going to use that because this is an IT related item. It was, so that budget was overspent by 2.3 million budget to actual. Were these agreements built into that budget line specifically?
I think the majority of them probably were, yes, so, yep.
Okay, and then the other question was in regards to, on page C3, the capital outlay line item there. So it looks like we saved $3 million in that line item.
Correct.
Okay. And then the last question is I like the notes on C26 where you basically are summarizing all the overages. So obviously, if there's a contract or something that exceeds the ordinance, that they would have to bring that to this board to get full approval. So do we look at that in any of these departments that have gone over budget through the audit process?
We didn't look at, if you try to look, like we're looking at the sheriff's department, we audited, it was not a major fund, so we didn't hit it in detail. We do look at the budget to actual analytics. We do talk to management about, what caused the overage, what it was related to.
That's great. Commissioner Perna.
In your scope, those departments that deal with cash, do you do any surprise impromptu audits on that, or is that something we need to do internally here?
We do not, because we're coming in after the fact. So if you're looking for something during the year,
So that would be up to the county if we want to do an impromptu audit of a department that deals in cash based on their ledger through the end of a day, that they would have this much on cash, or they would hold it until there's a certain amount that they would then transfer over to the treasurer's office. So
Correct.
That's something that we should be doing. Do you know if we're doing that?
I do not. So
Thank you.
that is something, if requested by the county, we could do as an additional procedure.
As far as you know, we have no way of monitoring who deals in cash, where the cash is at, when it's sent to the treasurer's office.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Hall?
And maybe this is a question for you, Joe. I'm looking at your C-26 page again, and it says Family Court Juvenile Division. Would corrections, community corrections be included in that budgetary number?
I don't believe so.
If not, where would I find it?
That would be a special revenue fund. So they,
Oh, no,
looks like
their
they-
budget's
they-
bigger than that.
they didn't exceed their budget. That's why they're not listed on that, in that note, if that's correct, Marlene.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, and secondly, it says Health and Welfare, Social Services, final budget amendment 59,562 actual. What is defined as Health and Welfare, Social Services?
That is the breakdown as they're put into the groupings for the budget to actual. I'd have to actually dig into, to get you the list. We can do that, what actually goes into that grouping for that line item.
Is it in this book somewhere? Because I could not find it.
No, probably, no, wouldn't do that detail,
That
but we can get that,
explains
we can get you the detail of what groupings go into that specific line item. If
Thank you. Maybe that'd be a good idea for all of them. If there's multiple groupings in any of these categories, there has to be, right?
Yeah, these are grouped by the state chart of accounts for the most part. So the state chart of accounts says, this one is I'll just say 265 type of account. And here, if it's this type of account, here's what it's grouped with. But you're talking like a specific line item, there's a lot of groupings that go into what makes up the financial statements.
If we don't have that, I would appreciate seeing that. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Van Sickle?
Thank you. You mentioned that the reconciliations by state, is that law or whatever, or should be within 6 weeks?
That's the state recommendation.
Okay, so it's a recommendation.
Yeah, when we
so
fill
there's no
out,
penalties with that if?
there
if
is not.
they're-
One of the things, when we fill out we have something we do, it's called an auditing procedure report that's filled out when we submit the report to the state. And it does ask if they were done in a timely fashion. And the wording on that says the state defines timely as 6 weeks.
Okay,
But for actually a law that says it has to be done, I'm not aware of any.
okay. So we suffer no penalties
No.
or anything for that? Okay, good. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Marlene, I know in our budget for this year, we had allocated some funds for an internal controls audit. I know we discussed this last year, that it would be a good idea to do that. Obviously, we went through a huge conversion with Workday, and
Right.
our finance department was just a little overwhelmed, so we weren't able to complete that. But now that we've gone through this conversion and we are now in Workday, is it still a very good idea to undertake an internal control audit?
It actually is, as you just mentioned, you've converted to a new system. Lots of things were changed. Lots of new processes were established. So it would be good to take a look at your internal controls to see if they're operating, if they need to be updated. There may be things with a new system. The new system will do a lot of tracking we noticed, when you get in, who puts the entry in, who reviews it. That's all available in the system. So that's a really good, it's a tracking system. So if somebody gets in and puts any entry in, you can tell who did it. So that's one of the great things about your new software. But just things like, controlling of cash, journal entries coming in. That's
So the
changed
question that
considerably.
Commissioner Perna asked, and specifically in regards to cash, those would all be answered with an internal controls audit.
That is correct, yes.
And then one last question, could you go back to your slide about with the cash position?
And the general
For the
fund
general
or
fund.
for the,
For the general fund, cash position specifically. We're obviously going through one of the largest project this county has ever undertaken with the new central intake. In regards to where our cash is, I know that due from other funds is changed from year over year. Specifically though, why did it due from other funds increase so much from year to year? What, was it a time issue?
it was it's a timing issue, yes.
Okay.
If we'd have done if the audit, the end of the year had been 4 days later, that number could have been different. So it's when the funds actually get transferred from one fund to the other.
So our true cash position at the end of 2023 was 130 million, is that about right?
It's for the general fund? Yeah, because you've got the due from, so that's money actually coming in, so correct.
In comparison to other counties or other clients that you have, where does that stand?
I guess it's kind of relative because it's just the size of the county. As per like a ratio, I'd have to see what your ratio actually is. We didn't look at that, but the liquidity, to have cash on hand to be able to meet the county's needs and coming in under budget is a very good sign. So,
Okay. Great. Well, I don't see any other questions. Thank you for the detailed presentation. Thanks for meeting our deadline.
yes.
Thanks for all the above. Thanks for being here. We appreciate it. And I know there's some follow-up questions, so we'll
Yes,
get
yep.
those
And we'll
in,
make sure we get those in, that was answered. Yep.
appreciate that.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Commissioners, so we have a motion on the floor to receive and file. Please vote.
Did you have a question? Motion passes 11-0.
Okay, next is department recommendations. I'll take a motion for items 8A through 8C.
So moved, Van Sickle.
Moved by Nard, supported by Van Sickle. And these items, the first one is a purchase of 3 Ford Police Interceptors. The second is one 2025 Ford Police Interceptor. And the third item is a Jeep Grand Cherokee. And Nicole?
Hello,
is
everybody.
here to speak about them. Afternoon.
Okay, so the first item is 3 Ford Police Interceptors, purchased from Lunghamer Ford in the amount of $135,423. Those are for positions that they just created, that were approved and in the budget. We're just trying to get those cars in because those positions start January 1st. Those are just for all the different sheriff locations. The second one is another police interceptor that is for the traffic grant. The traffic unit is paid for by the grant. So that again is just $45,141, and those funds are available right now because they're in a different fiscal year. The last one is a Jeep Grand Cherokee. We typically don't buy the Chryslers, but because this is for one of the undercover units, it's a different type of vehicle that doesn't look as much like a police vehicle as the other ones. So this one is from Lunghamer on the state contract pricing for $42,091. And that's for the sheriff's department.
Cool, quick question.
Sure.
Annually, like for next year's budget, what are you anticipating what's the total amount that we're gonna spend on vehicles?
I think we have roughly 1.64, about 2 million.
2 million?
Mm-hmm. That's for county and sheriff.
Okay.
Sheriff taking up
And
most
is
of
that kind
that.
of like a budget number that we use every year going forward typically? Or
Okay,
does it
so it's,
fluctuate?
well, with inflation, it's really gone up like the past probably 3 years. So it's gone up significantly. Sheriff typically replaces the same number of cars each year just because they run the same mileage. So it's a pretty good like historical way of looking at things. With the county side of things, it really just depends because our vehicles are getting pretty old. So like this year, we're replacing a lot more county vehicles than we have in years past, just due to age and like what needs to be replaced and things like that. So we're spending a pretty decent chunk on county vehicles this year, probably around 400,000 is what I have budgeted for county vehicles, which includes like animal control, F&O, and purchasing.
Great, thank you. Seeing no other questions, please vote. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you, guys.
Motion passes 11-0.
Okay, next item is budget amendment IT for Central Intake Center in the amount of $101,875, and also 8E, we'll combine these, fiber optic backbone and cleaning service for Central Intake. Actually, the same thing, pardon me. I'll take a motion to recommend 8D and E to full board.
So moved by Nard.
Support, Perna.
Moved by Nard, supported by Perna. Hey, Jaco.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. We are moving the data center in the old jail. We're moving that to the Powerhouse, so this is part of that process to ready the jail for the move of that data center, creating a new MDF in the jail, and also to accommodate the IT infrastructure that's needed to have network connectivity. The Motor City part of it, which is $84,575, is to install a new fiber optic backbone cabling for all the IT closets throughout the existing jail to limit downtime when the data center is actually moved over to the Powerhouse and to exit the current data center location. It is also to put new access control equipment at the Powerhouse for the new data center. And then the Gemtech portion of it, which is $17,300, is for cleaning of the new MDF room in the existing facility, as well as the professional relocation of the IT racks and network equipment from the existing facility in the old jail to the new Powerhouse.
Thank you, Jaco. Commissioner Van Sickle?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Jaco. Where your existing data center is that room going to be repurposed, or is that part of the building that's being demolished?
As far as I know, that is not being demolished. It is going to be repurposed.
Thank you. Probably, any idea what?
I can speak to that. But essentially, the existing MDF.
Come to the mic, if you could come to the mic, thank you.
The existing MDF closet is actually add to the division line between where max security in the remaining building will be. So it will be impacted by the demolition of max security. And it is also part of some repurposing of that space because of the elevator impacts to, that's also at that adjacency, will actually become a new elevator machine room.
Okay, you referred to it as a closet, so I assume it's not very large.
No, it isn't very large
Okay,
whatsoever.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Jaco's, are the funds for this being used from the ARPA portion, or are these general fund dollars?
We'll probably ask Joe. Yes. As part of the ARPA funds, yes.
It'll be part of, it'll actually be general fund portion of it. So it isn't qualifying under the ARPA portion of it, so
So that's why it's separated like
that's
this.
why it's separated, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no other questions, please vote.
Motion passes 11-0.
Okay, next item is item F. This is contract with ABF Environmental for consulting services for the central intake in the amount of $265,080. Need a motion to recommend this to full board.
So move.
Support.
Moved by Haw, supported by Nard.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Joe Mallory with F&O. I'm sitting in for Ben Treppa today, so you have the B team. Item 8F is a contract with ABF Environmental to provide the CIAC CIP environmental consulting services from November 21st, 2024 to March 15th, 2027 in the amount of $265,080. Funding is available in the Central Intake and Assessment Center CIP project budget. ABF Environmental will prepare bid specifications for hazardous waste removal and abatement, work with the Macomb County officials and contractors, perform walkthroughs, assist in making qualified contractor selections, management, and oversight of the bid process, environmental demolition oversight and testing, daily monitoring reports, and final closeout reporting. Asbestos survey hazmat quantification of the 4 structures have been completed by ABF Environmental. Quantification of other potential hazardous materials may need to be established as the project progresses due to unforeseen conditions and building access issues. ABF will prepare a set of technical specifications and bidding documents for the removal of hazardous materials identified during the asbestos building survey reports and hazmat quantification. ABF is writing bid specifications for asbestos caulk removal and max security and bid specifications for underground tank removal. ABF will also provide on-call environmental services during work within the jail in the event suspected materials not previously identified arises.
It was thorough, Joe.
That was thorough. So just a little inside baseball. Ben thoroughly prepared me for this.
Commissioner Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nice job, Joe.
Hey,
Quick
thank you.
question for you. When we began this project, didn't we have a crew out there to assess the environmentals for the site before we started
Yeah.
to do any work?
We did.
And is this company different than that company? Okay.
No, as Joe stated, ABF Environmental did provide both a phase 1 environmental, which really looks at property, and also performed the hazardous material assessments of all of the wings that are being demolished, identified a comprehensive report. This is allowing us to move to the next step to where they'll provide the services to be able to move to the actual remediation of those items that were identified and found, much of which, in all honesty, most of it, there was very little because F&O has really mitigated that over time. And so this will allow them to provide the guidance as well as providing the third-party inspection during that process while, our next contract we'll be bringing is really the remediation contractor who will actually do the work. And ABF will actually oversee that remediation to assure compliance with all guidelines and to mitigate any risk.
Great. Thank you. I tried to give you an easy question. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Van Sickle.
Thank you. Does this 265 cover the disposal costs of the materials they need to remediate?
ABF themselves will not actually be performing the remediation. ABF performs professional services. So they're a professional service firm. They're actually not doing the remediation. This will enable us to put together bid specification and contract documents to procure the actual remediation and abatement of all of that. And that'll be a contract that we'll be looking to bring. I think right now we're slated to bring that in January. And all of that enables us to be able to do this ahead of the demolition of the remaining 3 wings that'll be phased over the course of the central intake. So this will allow that remediation work to happen before Granger's contract includes the actual demolition of the building.
Okay, I just misunderstood. You said something about this would prepare us for the next step, and I thought that next step was the remediation.
Understood.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, we have no other questions on this item. Please vote.
Motion passes 11-0.
Okay, next is items 8G and 8H. This is a budget amendment for facilities and operations for Phase 3 site electrical powerhouse for Martha T. Berry upgrades in the amount of $4,923,202. I'll take a motion to recommend these two to full board.
Support.
Moved by Lucido, supported by Nard. Joe?
Yes, thank you. This item is a contract with Granger Construction Company to provide construction management services from November 22nd, 2024 to September 18th, 2025 in the amount of $4,923,202. This amendment is under the budget estimate carried to date and is inclusive of the Board of Commissioners approved facilities and operations capital improvement budgets. The project consists of building and site modifications and electrical distribution upgrades to the existing Macomb County Powerhouse, Martha T. Berry Building, and jail, including demolition and new construction. This project is in cooperation with and impacts the construction of the new Central Intake and Assessment Center and will be managed by Granger Construction Company to coordinate the concurrent efforts. This update represents the mutual efforts of PMR, D. Clemente Siegel Design, Granger Construction Company, and Macomb County Administration to present a framework in order to identify, evaluate, and recommend subcontractors for this project. The project team is recommending Granger Construction Company's GMP contract amendment number 005, including their hard construction costs, staffing fees, direct costs, contingencies, and their subcontractors listed in the attached award recommendation of $4,923,202 be established for this project. The item was listed on the 2024 Facilities and Operations Capital Improvement Plan.
Joe, quick question. So this is obviously related to the intake indirectly, or is this just Martha T. Berry specifically?
I can speak to that. It's indirectly. So it is, the primary impact is to the Powerhouse and to Martha T. Berry, but does actually provide site and electrical upgrades that cross the central intake site to, and impacts the jail as well. So this was a project that F&O had budgeted and planned and was actually tabled with the approval of the central intake project. And then since such time, as Jaco kind of referred to as well, has actually evolved since then and allows for the migration of the data center. So the project was essentially rescoped in some ways to provide the build out of the data center as well.
So essentially, we're rehabbing all of our electrical in that entire area.
I wouldn't say all of it, but yes, a portion of it.
Okay.
Yes.
Commissioner Van Sickle.
Thank you. I seem to remember something about the electrical for some of the site that's not Martha T. Berry goes through the Martha T. Berry facility. Have you run into that? And my question is if that's so, will this be sort of separating those?
So I guess I'm not sure entirely of your question, but the electrical for the central intake in the jail does not pass through Martha T. Berry.
Okay.
So anything associated with that, it does not pass through the Martha T. Berry site or building.
And did I hear correctly that this $5 million is only for managing the project? It's not for doing it?
No, it is actually for the construction efforts.
construction,
Yes.
okay.
So the team, because this is indirectly impacting the central intake and is in cooperation in many efforts relative to the technology, the migration of that, the project team chose to bring Granger on to manage the entire thing so that logistically everything happened when it needed to. So this is an amendment to the contract that they have in place. Is budgeted separately and will financially be accounted for separately.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Hall.
Thank you, Chair. Hello there, Mr. Golfer.
Hey.
In these conversions that you're going through, are we currently following all existing labor agreements that are either in place or for the future?
Relative to the construction,
Construction, existing union contracts, things like that?
Relative to the construction contract, yes. I mean, I guess I don't want to speak for Jeff, who will be managing the construction contract.
Oh, you can speak for him.
Yes, the short answer is yes, we're in compliance with all labor agreements.
Okay. And that's going to be the position moving forward, so
Yep.
we don't have to ask that every time you're here.
Correct.
Thank you. That's all I have, Chair.
Good. I don't see any other questions on these two items, but I know the next item is correspondence, just as an update on the dashboard. If you guys can all stay here, just to give us a quick
Certainly.
update on that when we get to that item here next.
I
know
thought
you
this was
guys
file
get
and
your stuff
receive.
done. You get to
You got your quarterly update already. Wait a minute.
We have a motion on the floor. Commissioners, please vote. Get what you want and you run.
They're looking at the door.
I was trying.
Motion passes 11-0.
Okay, next item is correspondence, Central Intake Assessment Center Dashboard Report for November 2024. Need a motion to receive and file.
So move.
Support.
Made by Haas, supported by Romano. So I just wanted to grab you guys just really quick because I get this question from some commissioners, where do we stand? So this is the dashboard for November as far as ARPA funds, as far as general funds, what we spent. Do these numbers include what we just passed here, or do they not include those?
They would not.
They would not.
They would not. I mean, I think there's a subnote underneath of that that says what identifies when our ability to reconcile that with the finance department.
Okay.
But no, it would not.
So I see
It would,
here,
it would
'cause it's
from
in
a,
real
it
small
would, it
print.
would from a total budget standpoint,
But-
yes,
but
but
an
relative to any
actual-
commitments or actuals, no, it would not.
Okay, so we're about 45 days behind as far as reconciliation on this dashboard, as far as where the true numbers are at. Finance is doing this update?
Our Plan Moran Real Point works in cooperation with the finance department to report that. So we're tracking all of the expenses and everything for the entire program.
Okay, and next month, I believe you guys are back with some big contracts? Is that correct?
Yes, with
Okay.
with a big amendment, yes.
A big amendment. Okay, so could we get these numbers updated through November actual on this dashboard with finance so that we can see them before we pass anything in December?
I believe so. We are, I think we're slated to bring, because that would have to be through November 30th. Our timing right now, bringing that contract, we were able to work with the board to push that back to the 6th.
Okay.
So I will have conversations with the finance department to see that we can be sure that all of that
That'd
is
be great.
is realized
Our
at
full
that point.
board is next week, I believe?
Yes.
Right, next week. So this is all moving to full board. So after that, I'm going to consider that all December.
Yes, so that would be these commitments to this point would not probably include, it would not include the big amendment because that won't come until December.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Seeing no other questions, please vote. Now you guys are good to go.
All right.
Easy.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for the great presentation, for everything there.
Motion passes 11-0.
Okay, next is public participation. This is the opportunity for public participation for those who would like to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes on any issue. Anyone from the public like to speak? Once? Twice? We'll close public participation. Next is commissioner comments. Commissioner Nard?
I just wanted to ask everybody to pray for my family. I'm going to be leaving tomorrow to help my sister bury her husband. And the young 7-year-old boy that got killed in a car accident, that was a friend of my grandchildren, and so they're very devastated by that. So is the parents. If you could do anything to help them bury this young man, they would greatly appreciate it. I put all the GoFundMe information on my page, and they don't know exactly what's going to happen with his 4-year-old sister. She has a brain bleed. So they don't know what the outcome of that's going to be. And the other young man that was 23, they suspect his neck is broken. He's still in a coma now. So the mother's very devastated they were on their way somewhere, on their way home actually, and got hit by a suspected drunk driver. Hit them from behind and knocked their car over, and the young baby fell out of the car, and that's how he passed away at the scene. So keep them in prayer as well, and just keep my family in prayer. We have a lot of things going on that I'm helping them with, and hopefully by the end of the year I can get it all taken care of. So y'all have a blessed weekend.
Commissioner Romano.
Just want to say, keep Gus Ganem in your thoughts. He's having that serious back surgery as we speak. Didn't respond this afternoon, but be nice to send him a word of encouragement if you have a time. That's all.
Commissioner Hall.
Thank you. Gus posted social media, him in the gown, the hat, in the bed, moving into surgery, which was quite a sight. Oh, he's out of surgery, worse than they thought. They removed both masses. The doctor said I should be fine. So all good, 2-hour surgery. Tell everybody thanks for the prayers and God bless.
Good. Thank you for the update.
On the Gus. And wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving.
Good.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioners. Okay, seeing no other comments.
Motion to adjourn?
Made by Romano, supported by Nard. Please vote. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you Monday.